right. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Tom Lee. I work at a place called Greenhouse Studios, which is a research center based out of the UConn Library here. At Greenhouse Studios, we focus on digital humanities projects, and we still have this collaboration first, design first sort of orientation. So I gave a little bit of a spiel about that yesterday, but I can describe it a little bit more in case you weren't able to join the Court 600 session. So basically, our should like have to advance both. Basically, our model is we follow like a design thinking inspired, process driven model for creating projects, and we're trying to experiment and develop a collaborative culture for developing these kinds of digital humanities
It
projects.
doesn't look like you're capturing it.
Oh.
You would make sure.
I am not sure.
Right.
Sure. Are we good? Oh, okay. Should I just check this to make sure that? Okay. I'm not sure what.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I really put you off the kid. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We have some wiggle room here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to get rid of this tab somehow.
We can expand more and we'll.
Okay, here we go. So yeah, we try to take our projects through this sort of like 5-step design thinking inspired model, and basically we're trying to fix some known problems in doing these kind of projects where, you know, generally faculty would come up with an idea, develop the idea, sort of export it for, you know, other people to work on with the specific skills and expertise needed to do that. And, you know, there are problems that arise from that model. So basically, we're just trying to get everyone on the same page at the beginning and throughout the process. So I skipped one. So, oh God. This may be a problem. I have a short video. I can pull that up later, but this is just a short video of the Charles VR experience, just a little crawl. Basically, what I want to say about it, though, up front, is that it's a recreation of the Coronation Mass of Charles V, who, depending on how you view it, might be the last Holy Roman Emperor. We can talk a little bit more about that.
Is this the 1530 Emperor coronation?
That's right, yeah. So basically, our aim for the project is to create this historically faithful virtual reality environment that allows for players to explore this moment in history. And our whole approach with it is to sort of create this like bottom-up experience where instead of having a lecturer describe every single aspect of the environment, all the attendees, what they were wearing, the setting, the decorations that were created specifically for the event, just placing people in that context and allowing them to explore that environment piece by piece and sort of put together this larger context. So one key feature of the experience is it features music that was sort of reconstructed by one of our collaborators, Eric Rice. It's on the side here. So he's a music historian and musicologist based here at UConn. He's also the head of the music department. But he has this ensemble called Ensemble Origo, which is they're here, and they recorded the entire sequence of musical performances that were featured during this coronation mass. Right now in our prototype, we have just a single piece from that whole sequence of musical performances. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So just quickly, I probably won't even read everyone's name here, but I just wanted to give a shout out to all the active members of the Charles VR team. We have obviously had successive waves of other people working on this over the years. By the way, we started in 2017. This was the first project I worked on when I joined Greenhouse Studios, so it's sort of near and dear. If you'd like, I'm going to recommend that you check out an in-development companion website. You can go to charlesvr2.netlify.app to check that out while I'm talking. If you want to dive a little bit deeper on some of the historical tidbits, which I may not be able to fully do justice to, not being a historian. Yes, Netlify. Sorry, it's like I also do this thing where I'm always like, that's so close to Netflix, like this feels dangerous. Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit lame and just read some rant speak here because I really can't do justice to this sort of off the top of my head. But we're going to talk about why are we focusing on this event, and beyond maybe the obvious circumstantial point that we happen to have Eric Rice as a collaborator, and he has pre-existing work that covers the topic. I think there's some important things that we want to say about that. So the event itself is historically significant for at least 3 reasons. First, Charles' empire included more of Europe than that of any ruler since the 9th century. He was heir to the Habsburg dynasty of Austria, the Valois dynasty of Burgundy, and the Trastamara dynasty of Spain, whose nascent colonies also included substantial portions of the Americas and Asia. Because the consolidation of the Spanish conquest of the New World took place during his reign, his coronation was both a European and a world historical event. Second, 2 major conflicts involving religious difference were developing at the time: the advance of the Muslim Ottoman Empire into Eastern Europe and conflicts with German princes resulting from the Protestant Reformation. The coronation mass, which cast Charles as the protector of the Catholic faith, was especially significant in this context of religious conflict. Show you some territorialness. So I think everything orange is part of Charles' sort of inherited territory, and everything in green is allied states or friendly, and blue is enemies. So third, it was the last coronation of any ruler as Holy Roman Emperor. Again, we'll talk a little bit about that. Marking the end of a tradition that stretched back to the coronation of Charlemagne by Pope Leo III in the year 800. Though the event reflected much of the contemporaneous political situation, it was also a product of 7 centuries of medieval tradition that was, unbeknownst to the participants at the time, coming to an end. This one event then raises questions surrounding a unified Europe, hegemony and colonialism, religious difference and tolerance, and the role of tradition in contemporaneous culture. Issues that remain at the forefront of the 21st century society and culture. 16th century organizers mediated between the traditions of medieval imperial coronation and the needs of their own political reality. So I'm just showing this image to make clear. I think you brought up briefly that there were actually 2 coronations involved in becoming the Holy Roman Emperor. And so when we say last Holy Roman Emperor, my understanding is that we're talking about the fact that these 2 coronations were expected to happen for that to be a legitimate thing. So the first one was being crowned King of Germans in Aachen, and then the second one would be being crowned Emperor of the Romans in Rome. But so I have a couple of trivia questions in here, just because it's a gaming conference, so I thought why not. There was a hitch. There was some reason that the coronation couldn't be held in Rome, and it has multiple choices. So A, okay, this isn't a way, isn't it? Oops. Okay, hopefully I didn't give it away. A, Charles hated Rome. B, it was destroyed. C, it was too hot and smelly. D, there was a plague. Do you have any votes for?
I mean, syphilis was spreading at the time in novel form, so I was thinking D.
Okay, one vote for D maybe?
Yeah,
Any other?
vote for D.
Okay, two for D. Any other guesses? Okay,
Okay.
it was actually B. So the sack of Rome happened in 1527. This was 3 years preceding the coronation. And so this was sort of a shocking and I think somewhat unexpected events. Basically, the situation was a large mercenary army that was in Charles V's employ had been waging war on territories in Italy that were actually controlled by, or the Italian peninsula controlled by French.
Are these the Lutheran rebels who then for Charles V and then convert to Protestantism and am I getting the story right?
I think that it may have at least been in part that, but when I was refreshing my memory on this recently, again, I'm not an expert in history necessarily, but it seemed like the army was composed of maybe several different nationalities, several thousand each. But I couldn't really speak to it in more detail than that. That's okay. So yeah, this made it, a very sort of precarious political situation. If Charles V was to be eventually crowned emperor by the Pope. It turned out that the Pope, in addition to the city just being generally pillaged, the Pope himself was actually captured and incarcerated by this army. Or I guess maybe held hostage. I'm not exactly sure how to frame it. Anyway, so traditionally, the Roman coronation would have been held in the old St. Peter's Basilica. And it's not really clear to me how much damage this particular building, how much it was damaged, but there are also accounts about it generally being sort of out in disrepair. So it's maybe plausible that it was just not really going to be a suitable location anyway. So this kind of brings to mind one of the four recurring themes in the experience, which was that of the importance of place and placemaking. And we've had some conversations within the team about this idea of the virtual coronation. What ended up happening is they picked a second location, an alternate location for the Roman coronation, which happened to be Bologna. And so this is just another picture of old St. Peter's Basilica. To make this Polonaise coronation feel legitimate, there were several structures that were created specifically for this event, including a very large platform and two temporary side chapels, which might have been inspired by something like this structure that you see on the right. And this is our first screenshot from the actual experience that we're seeing. You can see this isn't the easiest way to see. You can definitely see the platform, but you'll maybe see a slightly better shots of the side chapels. They're sort of hidden between these columns right now. Again, this is all kind of speculative based on written accounts. Any artwork that exists, and we'll see a few contain mostly people for perhaps obvious reasons, but you can also see, we'll talk a little bit more in detail, there's some annotations hovering around this central disc. And we'll see a little bit more of that. Yeah, in the middle of that platform, there's something called a porphyry disc, which so this is the new St. Peter's Basilica. You're seeing the porphyry disc on the floor here, this red circle. This was actually one of the few remaining aspects of the old St. Peter's Basilica that was reused in the new St. Peter's Basilica, and it happens to be the spot where Charlemagne originally knelt during his coronation. And so this had a particular significance for the coronation of Charles V, because they're retaining the 700-year-long tradition of doing these very specific rituals. So the porphyry disc here we can see embedded within this platform in the middle of the church here. By the way, this is, I don't think I mentioned, this is St. Petronio Basilica in Bologna. So there were some interesting developments or realizations that we had while constructing the environment, including the fact that, you know, it wasn't finished. It had been in construction since the late 14th century, and so now we're talking early 16th century, and then I think at least another 100 years of construction continued after that. So it ends up being a pretty interesting sort of patchwork of different phases of development over the years. So one interesting note, why I'm showing the vaulted ceiling here is because we went through the trouble of modeling that, and that in fact was not something that existed during the coronation. So we did eventually have to cover that with some sort of not as appealing rounds. Again, speculative. This is just an example of some of the texturing work. You know, this church contains, I think, at least 24 different side, like, you know, permanent side chapels. So like they're basically little bays all throughout the length of the church, and this is just happens to be one of the most sort of ornately decorated ones. I think this one is 15th century, if I remember correctly. Yeah, but this one is just like, if you see photos of it, is actually covered in, you know, frescoes from top to bottom. So it's really sort of interesting. We can talk a little bit about some of the character design and the challenges involved with that. I have to say, I'm a little apprehensive to do this talk because I really came into this space more as a developer and not so much as a designer. So I'm not sure if I'll actually have that much interesting game design stuff to talk about.
I want to hear your angle on this project, whatever it is. I don't actually care about game design.
So yeah, I mean, that's what I can provide. So hopefully I'll be able to talk about that. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, this project involves, you know, some of really sort of problems for game development, including how do you render tons and tons of characters. You know, this event would have been attended by thousands of, you know, many thousands of people, and by all accounts, it was absolutely packed. Probably not, you know, up to modern code, certainly. I actually have another trivia question that sort of ties into that a little bit. So yeah, this is just the first iteration of what we call the extra characters. It's really just like 4 sort of cardboard cutout versions, you know, taken from some contemporary paintings. And yeah, we created a script that would basically just populate all the sort of empty standing room in the church. You can also see a hint of some like maybe more sophisticated 3D characters. These were sort of prototype Imperial Guards standing around the porphyry disc there. Oh yeah, this this is a fun one. There's one account that spends, maybe surprisingly to us, the majority of this description just describing the outfits that were being worn. So I'm pretty sure this is one of the conversations where I think before. It's kind of an interesting comparison to think about, like, well, what would this be like today? I think it's probably like a combination of the Met Gala and like the presidential inauguration, but you know, there's also the whole like defending all of Christendom stuff, which maybe elevates it to a scale beyond just these 2 things combined. So yeah, maybe this is candid, but I mentioned I have another trivia question. So this is just a tidbit that always sticks in my mind. That you know, paints a really stark contrast between our current world and past. But so I'm asking you, what tragic mishap occurred the day of the coronation? there was was it a freak snowstorm? B, a huge fight broke out. C, wild animal attack, or D, bridge collapse, I think.
Yeah, bridge collapse sounds more sane. Wild animal attack is my preferred.
I'm going with you. Fine.
All right, well, people said bridge collapse, we're correct. Every time I think about this, I'm just blown away because, like, this bridge collapsed and people actually died, like, drowning in the river. Some of them were probably riding horses and such. But uh, it's just interesting to imagine, like, would we still go on with an event of this scale if something like that happened today? I feel like they'd maybe like push that back a few days, but I think everything just went along like clockwork. I think life was maybe a little bit more cheap back then. Uh,
I mean, I'm thinking about like the Queen's Jubilee, right? And also the arrangements made right now for the Queen's funeral, which are already like in place.
Right.
I'm thinking the same is happening in 1530. That this coronation has been so massively choreographed and thought about that nothing would interrupt it.
right.
It is absolutely nothing. Unless it like actively interferes with the space of the ceremony.
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with sort of royalty and royal pageantry, it just has to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I remember reading accounts about this where, the planning, obviously it was like at least a year ahead of time, and like even just the travel time for the two, entourages of, the papal and imperial entourages to get there. That's a months long sort of endeavor. Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about, I just briefly wanted to mention, like, since we talked about the bridge collapse, maybe we can mention there was this huge procession, maybe not a surprise. But it's also interesting to think about some of the aspects, sort of that projected like economic strength. Like apparently there was, tossing of gold and silver and precious metals to people, just that happened to be around. And also there was afterwards there was a gigantic feast. I think. Well, I'm not sure if anyone could attend. I'm not exactly sure what the rules are, but again, just a projection of economic strength there. Okay, back to characters. We're looking at version 2 of the filler characters. These are now 3D, and you can't see, but they actually have very subtle sort of animation that gives them just a little bit of life without being too distracting. That's always sort of a question that's floating through my mind. Anything else I want to point out about this? Yeah, there's some the process of like discovering exactly what or like speculating about what the arrangement of everything in the church is kind of an interesting challenge. Compared to the modern day version of the basilica, it's actually sort of truncated by maybe like 20%, and the arrangement of the altar area, the main altar area in particular, is quite different. Like this iron grating separating the main chapel from the rest of the church does not exist now, but it's an interesting feature of the older that we discovered in sort of older depictions of this space. I was just going to look at the main chapel from the front of the church. There's also another theme about the experience that we're sort of trying to bake in, which is returning to that theme about place and some thoughts that we've had about points of view within the actual experience. So we talk a lot about these layers of understanding that were probably happening, where, if you were a spectator in this sort of area at the back where like all the extras are, it's very improbable that you would actually have directly seen really any of the important ritual acts happening. They did sort of scatter or spread them out, distribute them throughout different parts of the church. Like obviously something happened on Porphyrius. I'm pretty sure he likely prostrate on it. There's this whole Imperial Guard that was, piece by piece, like the gloves, the mantle, all piece by piece assembled onto the emperor. But so this sort of brings to mind the importance of the music for as sort of this unifying experience. Although you could argue that maybe people heard different versions depending on whether they were Latin literate or not. Because there's inside the music there's also a lot of connections to different liturgical. It's sort of like a cobbling together of different liturgical pieces, and so like those layers of understanding definitely existed depending on your proximity with the papal court and the imperial court. And so we sort of have some, game design ideas that we talked about, having people embody those points of view and having them connect those points of view to these different layers of understanding. Right now we have in the experience 3 points of view. One where you're in the papal or imperial court, so you're standing in the main chapel amongst the main celebrants. One where you're like in one of the choirs, so you would have been in these choir stalls somewhere. And then one when you're towards the back. So,
And you can alternate among those points of view as well.
yes.
And if the thing is unfolding, so it unfolds in real time.
So right now there's like, the only really real-time aspect of it is the music playing, and there's
Okay, so it's static except for the view.
almost entirely static, but there. I'll also talk about if we have a video. This one will actually play. Okay, we have some ideas for visualizing different visual aspects of the ceremony. So these are something we. Is this playing? Yes. We're calling these vignettes. So there's some other challenges with character design and animation, like doing animating like flowing garments. It's pretty tricky. It's probably outside the scope of it.
So this is the viewer's experience, so it's like slime.
Yeah. So in order to get around that sort of
I mean, like AAA studios will take like, years.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm trying to get a feel for what you call the viewers the players. What do you call the person who puts on the
I'm not sure. I guess player is fine. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, right now there's not really much interaction that you have with any individual or any events that's happening. You can toggle these different categories of annotations that give you insight into different sort of categories of knowledge about what's happening. I think we're focusing on ceremony, music, history and politics, and people.
Is there any interactivity involved there? I mean, do you point at something like
right now you just like cycle through the categories, and depending on when you're standing, which point of view you are, you'll see different ones.
Okay.
Yeah, based on their front. There are some challenges though with that, like some annotations that we want to include talk about something abstract or something not like viewable. It's like an abstract concept, like just like I can't think of an example, but yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. So we have. Oh, here's an example. Yeah. Coronation banners are something you can definitely see. And, we tried to pick a reasonable, finding a location for everything that we want to talk about physically is hard because the scene is just so dense. So that's one challenge that we're definitely finding we're thinking about solutions. I'm not sure if we found yet. Also in the background here, you can kind of see the subtitles. These are actually following the lyrics, I guess you would call them, of the music that's being performed. And we're going to get to hear that actually, I think, soon. This is kind of like the main thesis question that we're wanting people to eventually grapple with after they spend some time, sort of scaffolding their curiosity about the event through just all the scenery and all the characters. We want them to come back to basically, I think what our strength is with this experience is being able to explain how Charles used the music to sort of communicate his feelings about this particular situation where, there was this falling out with the Pope who's supposed to crown him Holy Roman Emperor, and then also this idea that he's the protector of the Christian faith against multiple fronts of conflict.
This is probably outside your particular.
Sure.
But what other scaffolding is there at this point around the VR experience? Get the students, presumably get the students, to get the students from this experience to getting to that learning outcome, which was pretty well articulated in that last one.
Yeah, I think that's something I think that's something that our team has to return to. One of the other reasons I was sort of apprehensive about doing this talk is like, a lot of development for this was done between 2017 and 2019, so it's been kind of dormant for a while. I'm kind of refreshing myself on it. But yeah, I'm desperately feeling this need for us to return to sort of these basic game design questions, and I'm really learning that.
Well, I'm not sure you have to think of it in terms of game design.
Yeah.
I think have something that really probably already will do its part in getting the students to that learning extent. This point would be instructional.
Yeah, it's like you've got a space already, and even the features, and then there's this music piece, and I'm like, okay, how do we escort the student through the music, especially if they have no background?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think you have to do all that much. I mean, the way I would do it, just because of the way I have, is that I would have them experience this. I'd probably have them pre-read the text of the. Presumably, it's going to be they're singing it in Latin, and you're getting captured in English, right? But I might give them the Latin and the English because that, the classicists and the areas where you get translated make the difference. But and also like stimulate active learning. But I mean, you need them to just like annotate that document and talk about it in a form with a little bit of scaffolding structure. You get them to that nice to being able to answer that question, and it's probably going to be a pretty good outcome.
Our space, right? Maybe there's a candle or something that's in their peripheral vision that will be an actionable item or something that could then just bring up like what you're hearing now is and basically then you have your pre-annotations as well. So they might have to actually produce the learning over there, but that then typically speaking, you're always providing some context going along with the, is it conjunct or disjunct melody? Is it following, certain lines of Renaissance music, or is it, it just like the absolute basics? So the student can be like, oh. But from any position in the VR, right? That they can still be in the VR and not be drawn out of the immersion, but still be like, oh, side note, this is what we're doing. And then you just have to have that available on the timeline of the music as playing. Is the music spatialized? Like is it different parts of the space?
Slightly. Okay, so that's actually one thing that we sort of that we experimented with and I kind of abandoned just because like the audio spatialization plugins that we were testing out seem to be geared towards like pretty macro effects, and I think that's maybe not a surprise for gaming because when you think of an application of audio spatialization for gaming, you're thinking, well, my default thought is like, what you're playing some sort of first-person shooter thing, you're like trying to figure out where other people are. So like that's what I feel like those plugins were sort of geared towards, whereas we were trying to produce something much more subtle and more acoustically accurate. Maybe that has changed in the last several years, but
I guess you have to do a design ideal on the different sources of music. Like if you have, because again, you have to design prioritize. So like, would you want to capture acoustic like echo, or would you try to nail source, right? Like the choir is there, because I'm thinking that's the power of being in a cathedral is the acoustics,
right?
And how do you do that in such a basic way that does not wreck the bank or you have to overthink it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the coolest effects that we could achieve it was like, you know, having that sort of dampened and like washy reverb sound that you would get like if you were like towards the back of the church, you know, all the tapestry bodies are absorbing like so much sound and then you're like mostly getting echo. I think that would be great, but I'm not exactly sure what's out there right now in terms of being able to create that kind of effect.
And part of it is also like you're already restricting the movement of everybody in the VR space. You just restrict them to the acoustic space that you want them to be in, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's actually
Sorry.
that's our approach for now. Like we've created 3 different mixes for each point of view, and for now that's working.
You got it. Yeah. No, then that's it. So you don't have to worry about it then.
Yeah, and like I mean that's another question that we had for a while is like, you know, how much movement freedom do we want? Like it seems a little bit lame in some respects to like have these fixed points of view, but like there are other challenges like where do you like with so many characters, where can you necessarily like where can you put how many other places can you put people?
You can make that a virtue because the people who are there put only in from their point of view.
No.
So I mean, I was gonna say that what low hanging fruit here is how does your experience, your body, as you move from point to point to point, and I don't know where the point of view are, but I assume one is from the cheap scenes, one is from like the merchant scenes, and one is from the soccer scenes.
Right.
So how does that change the way you perceive it? And then, I mean, if you add in the fact that it is sort of the fact that it's the last. But it's I mean there's so much you can do. And I mean this is me having my butt reports about are and are not.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, no, I think what you're doing, especially in revisiting space perspective and music, is a wonderful sort of experiment, and that also then to some degree some of the human dynamics of a coronation are kind of secondary to the architecture and the music and whatever.
Right.
And that I think is okay, because we can then look at how space and music and acoustics reflect class dimensions of the society.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, the thing that this stuff always makes me think of is the tours, the discovery tours that and what, I mean, they're wonderful, and I'm so glad they're there, but because there's no scaffolding there. Like here we just gave you the Paragon thing, and we also have this game, which is absolutely historical. Everybody, except that they got a whole bunch of details right, and then they put it in this context where everything stuff that it was students to so interested in this because we played Assassin's Creed, you're like, because they played Assassin's Creed, you have to say, yeah, that's wonderful. Let's talk about how it actually was. And sometimes that works, but there's also always a, I don't know. But it's, I mean, these experiences, they are embodied. I mean, they don't, I mean, you can pay attention to your breathing, but they're not going to be embodied the way arrows from yesterday were embodied. But they are embodied in a really important way because of the way you're spatialized. And it's, they've been around for a long time.
Yeah, I think these are great points. I'll definitely have to check out that. I'm not familiar with the discovery thing. Yeah, do you guys want to hear some music before we?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. This is this is around 3 minutes long, but I don't know how long you want.
Yeah, full 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. This is I only have this page of the score, so unfortunately. Oh, turn this up. Is that loud enough?
A little taller, the littlest of the three. Go ahead.
Cool. Just to leave you with a note about those, that last word, fiat, where you might, usually expect an amen. So we have a note about that being sort of one of the ways in which this specific piece was sort of given that more Roman flavor, like harkening back to, Imperial Rome. That's pretty much all I can say about the music, though. If you want to know more about like all the ins and outs of a liturgical setting, I have. Hopefully Eric Rice will get to talk about this at some point, but if not, I have a slide deck that I can send along. So thanks for checking out some of Charles' Reart with me, and I don't have a demo right now. Honestly, we don't have time to do it, but I'm hoping to bring this to the arcade session.
Okay,
So, yeah.
I'll go to the arcade later and try it out.
Yeah.
I teach a survey of German culture course. That's why I'm so actively in this, and I'm a Cold War film historian, so I don't really have a lot of Renaissance background, but this is something I completely ignored. I sort of breezed on by and was like, let's get to the 30 Years' War, which is much more exciting for me. But you have now articulated that this is actually something we should pause and look at more closely, and a tool I could use with my students, obviously.
Oh, very good. That's so great to hear. Yeah, I'm so glad that you found it relevant.
I saw this on the program, like I have to. So not only then you're also doing the Holocaust project, with like, German studies is relevant, but are there any German studies people you're working with in any of these projects?
Not that I'm aware. I don't know. I can't speak up. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about 400-600 case, but definitely not for Charles Reart. Maybe that's an oversight.
Right. Obviously, Renaissance reason I just national Germany, etc. I'm still thinking. I'm thinking about our angle on it and what if I had to represent the German Studies Association's take on this material, what would they say? But I also invite you to present at our association, part of your team. I think they would eat this up, not eat you alive. And no, and possible things. So I'm going to talk to people and see, because I run digital humanities for German Studies Association. I thought, let's see how far we can go with these new, very exciting VR projects and connect you perhaps with more funding to get your figures.
Oh, that'd be so great, yeah.
So,
Yeah, let's definitely talk.
I'm very happy. Thank you.
Thank you.